So some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, but they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since there had no depth of soil. When the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they drifted away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seed fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. And let everyone who hears listen. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what is sown on the path. As for what is sown on the rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word, immediately receives it, and with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a little while, and when trouble or persecution arises on account of the world, that person immediately falls away. As for what has grown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of love choke the word, and yields nothing. But as for what is sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and another 30. The gospel of the Lord. Praise be to God. Please be seated. Grace, peace, and mercy are yours in kind God. Amen. If you read our weekly emails, you will know that we are going into several weeks of garden parables, which, as a gardener, I love, but I'm often very confused by. I wish that Jesus could come over here and walk through the garden with me and tell me why I planted some 5B, 6-8-ish of Aurora, Colorado desert garden planted with more than ample rain and more than temperatures. Planted fairly early in the year, according to my father's almanac, is not growing what I want it to grow. It's very frustrating. I wish he would, but that would be very nice. But instead, we get parables about gardening in the Middle East. Not very helpful to me. Of course, this is not actual gardening advice. These parables are supposed to tell us about the kingdom of heaven. These parables are supposed to tell us about who God is and how we are supposed to live together. And in this specific parable of the sower, we essentially meet three characters: sower, the good soil, and the not so good soil. Really. And this sower is throwing around seed all over the place. And that seed, of course, and some of that soil, it lands on the soil that makes it. And some of that seed lands on the soil where it is nurtured, it grows roots and yields something awesome. 160, 30-fold of what was sown. It's a good problem. And we might say to ourselves a couple of things. Firstly, why is this farmer throwing seed on bad soil? Not so smart. But that's not really the point. The point is that the farmer is, of course, going to have a harvest. The seeds that make it are going to grow and yield a lot. It's going to be a bountiful, abundant harvest. Whether the soil falls on rocky path or the weeds, or where it's going to be eaten by a bird, or on the fertile ground, God's word is going to take form. Some place. It's sort of like the Isaiah text in that way. Isaiah, remember, is talking to a people who are feeling very discouraged. They are in exile. They have seen their people taken into Babylonian captivity. Their king has been led away in chains. They are sad and grieving. And they have been for 50 years, long time. And it would be easy for them to Just let it go. To just live on the memory of what was. How good it was in the worshiping community back in Israel before things were bad. But Isaiah offers them this reminder. God has promised. God's word will nourish God's people like rain. God's word shall accomplish what God has promised. God has proposed. There will be celebration. There will be goodness. God will not cut off God's people. It might look different than what it was back in the day. It might take a while to get there. But God's love will be revealed. It is promised. And all of this, and my week with the students at the Western State Youth Gathering, and listening to the stories about church from the pastors and youth ministers from all over the country, it's all got me thinking about the sower, the seeds, and the soil. Because in this parable, the soil is something that people reading this parable invite conflict and change. It's a stagnant thing. Whatever happens to the soil, wherever the seeds fall, is where they fall. But I think that soil can change. If somebody wants to tend that soil. Growing up, I used to walk soybeans with Joshua Pearson picking stones. Anybody ever pick stones? One person picking stones. Two people picking stones. Does anybody know what picking? Three people picking stones. Anybody know what picking stones is? That iterates. So eventually, you follow a tractor has a wagon behind it, and you pick up rocks on a field. The worst job is it's not the worst job, but it's not fun. It's hot and miserable, and you pick up rocks all day. Just pick up stones on the field. Wagon, and go. And why do you pick up stones, Mary? Because it doesn't let the plants grow. The plants grow. You gotta pick up stones if you want the plants to grow. Stones make it hard for things to grow. Rocky soil makes it hard for things to grow. It makes it hard to tend the seeds. It makes it more challenging for things we want to grow. Things we are stewarding the gifts we have to yield fruit. And it's not like the Pearsons would just let stones sit around in their field. Norwegian farmers, they picked it up, got rid of it. Another way you can change the soil is by adding something to it, right? What would you add to soil? Yeah. Fertilizer. Yeah. Seed, manure, something organic. Something that is going to change the soil from what it has been, which is not very good for growth, to what it could be, which might be. That's how things grow. Anybody ever been around when manure is thrown on the field? What's that smell like? Bad. It doesn't smell good. It's manure. Not pleasant, but it helps things grow. It's a good thing eventually, right? So we know that soil can be mended, but by doing the difficult work of getting rid of stones, which restrict growth, or by adding a catalyst, even though it might seem a little bit unpleasant, by providing more nutrients. Now this week I talked to a lot of ministry people, a lot of different churches, and you know what they said? What are some of the things you think that our church people are saying? Church ministers. I'll give you it's something, it's stuff we talk about all the time.
Our church is getting smaller.
Our church is getting smaller, hey! So the church is getting smaller. We wish there were more families. We're having a hard time coming back from the pandemic. What else? Need more kids, sure. All that stuff. All that stuff. We're not alone on the journey. We're very much like the good people in Isaiah. Right? Our numbers, our kids, families. How do we engage in the community? How do we do this stuff? In California, in this week, there was some fertile soil. Fertile soil. The seeds of faith were planted. Sown all over the place there. All the kids, all the chaperones, the speakers, everyone. It was beautiful. God's presence was there. The worship, the seeds of faith had been sown in the people, in the speakers. The worship leaders, seed had grown in them. They had carved out space for themselves in the church where there once was no space. They had pulled the rocks out of their own soil, out of the church that was around them, bended their soil, so that they could have space to speak. People of color, women, gay people, where they just didn't exist before. We have leaders like that in the church now. It's incredible. Faith had taken hold of them, and they wanted to spread the good news to these kids. And they did. Now they are back. They spread seeds of faith of their own. This generation of kids yielding 160, 30 times more than this. It was phenomenal. And thinking about this parable, for like 6 days, seeds had grown and been sown in the hearts of our kids at the same times. And kids around the country. That is just one place seeds get sown. Faith gets scattered everywhere, to every people, right? In all sorts of ways, through discussions with coworkers, or our neighbors, or on the radio, or the cool breeze on a hot night, a council meeting, or Sunday morning worship. God is speaking to God's people all the time. Some of us have felt that. And we are promised in Isaiah that God's word will come to fruition. We know that it happens and that God's justice will rain down on all of creation. But as I was talking to these church leaders, now I hear a lot of the conversation around our congregation is what we're asking ourselves, how do we get more young families? How do we get young kids? How do we foster this stuff? How do we engage in the community? Some of what we're doing at St. Louis is really good. And not everybody has it. Every church has it. But some churches all around the country need to start asking themselves, is the church good soil? Are Christians living lives that make good soil and scatter seeds wherever they go? Are churches and Christians here to nurture people, support people, to ask hard questions of each other, welcome and include each and every person that walks through the door, no matter what their circumstances are, or past or uncertainties. When our own young people or new worshipers walk through our doors, is the church helpful to them in nurturing the seeds of faith that will let them hear? And are we casting seeds with God to help make that happen long? Or are there some things that we need to pick up out of our field that are getting in the way of their growth in ours? Stones. Are there ways we can mend the soil here and in our own world that would nurture growth? And what are those things? If there are big rocks in our field that need to go, what are they? And are we willing to pull them up and throw them in the fire? If there are ways we can provide new life-giving nutrients and fertilizer, look at what might that look like? what manure or fertilizer might stink at first. Are we willing to feel unpleasant for a little bit? If there are ways we can sow seeds more generously with more people in more places in different ways, what are some of the gifts of people we are missing? How can we be a part of God's good harvest? As promised and will be accomplished through God's good grace. Amen.